A while back I made a video on the worst features from every Borderlands game, and you guys really liked it, so we're back today to follow up on that video with a promise I made that we would do the best features from every single Borderlands game. Now, unlike the last one where I went with some stuff which I thought would be slightly out of the box, these ones are probably going to be more predictable, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't talk about them, because in my opinion they are core fundamentals of the franchise and each game shows them off in their best ways. But before we get into this video, I want to be clear about something. I don't just want to hear what I like about the games, I want to hear what you like, so please leave a comment for at least one of the games to let me know what you think is the best thing to come out of it. Bonus points if you talk about what it did for the franchise as a whole, and I'll pin the best one in the comment section. And without further ado, we are going to get started. Now, like the last video, we are going to be going in order here, or as much as we can, and we're going to start with Borderlands 1. That is right, we are starting off with the first game in the franchise here, and I'm going to talk about something which, funnily enough, is quite relevant right now, and that's going to be Pearlescentarity. So, for all of Borderlands 1's shortcoming, whether it be the drawn out vehicle sections, the awful gunplay, the terrible FOV, which granted was typical around then, or the very uninteresting story, we did get some good things out of the game, of course being the loot system, the bosses, the DLCs, which were actually pretty good. And speaking of DLCs, in one of them we got a feature which I don't think anybody really saw coming, and that was in the General Nox DLC we were introduced to none other than Pearlescentarity. Now, there's a few ways you can get pearls. First of all, you can get them well dropped. Most people will typically go to Nox's armory and do the armory farm to get them out of a chest. That is the more reliable way to do it. But if you haven't set yourself up for armory farming and you don't know how to do that, then another way you can go ahead and get pearls is by farming Crawmerax. Now, Crawmerax, if you don't already know, is one of the most horribly designed bosses in Borderlands history. It is an invincible boss, the first of its kind, which is basically the worst playing fight in the franchise. It almost entirely depends on you either doing one of two things. Number one is using Lilith the Siren, who can use her phase walk to go invisible to get behind Crawmerax, and the other option is to use a glitch to where Crawmerax just cannot see you. Now, the reason why this fight is so bad is because Crawmerax will just infinitely chase after you, facing you head on, and the purpose of the fight is that you have to break the shell off of him to kill him, right? But you can't really do that because one of the pieces is on his back and this dude never turns around, right? So a really unenjoyable fight, but nonetheless it does have a chance to drop a pearlescent when killed, albeit a very low chance. And when you do get a pearlescent, it is basically the same as every other weapon in the game. But for some reason this just did not matter. Fans seemingly loved this idea of a rarity that was just rare. I know, it's a crazy concept, they didn't want it to redefine the genre, they didn't want it to do anything special, they just liked how rare it was. Pearlescents became the ultimate chase, and there was even stuff like the Nemesis Invader hybrid which took pearls up a level, right? So a huge opportunity for farmers, serial farmers, to go into the game and have an absolute blast. Now, Gearbox would later add these back in Borderlands 2, however this time they were like really bad. I mean, they were just not good in the slightest, and a lot of people started to resent pearls for this reason, and sadly, that was the last time we ever saw them in the franchise. Of course, if you're following the discussion on Borderlands 4, you'll know that it is actually likely that we might be seeing them in Borderlands 4, and if you want me to make a video on that, let me know in the comment section down below. But pearls were introduced in Borderlands 1, they were brought back in Borderlands 2, and even when they weren't that good in Borderlands 2, people just loved the idea of pearls. There was just something about them that was captivating, it was gripping, and it added something to gameplay. And for that reason, I have to say that in my opinion, Borderlands 1's best feature, the best takeaway, is pearlescence. Now, I believe in the last video we went on to Borderlands the pre-sequel next, but you know what, I'm going to change that up this time if that is what we did. We're going to go to Borderlands 2 next, because we're going to talk about another staple of the franchise, which again, leading up to Borderlands 4 is more relevant than ever. That is dedicated drops. This for me is the absolute number one only choice you should be making when you talk about the best thing to come out of Borderlands 2. Now, let me be clear that there were dedicated drops to a degree in Borderlands 1, but it was nothing like what we saw in Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 took an already really enthralling loot system from what we had in BL1, and it built upon it with a new system where literally almost every single enemy in the game could be repeatedly farmed over and over and over again for a piece of gear that would drop from them at a specific percentage. Now, while this was present in Borderlands 1, it didn't catch fire until Borderlands 2, at least not in my opinion. This is where stuff like the Unkempt Herald and Conference Call became basically poster children for the game, and other stuff like the Fastball, Thunderball Fist, Invader, Lyuda, and it goes on and on and on. So many things blew up and exploded in popularity. This was then where YouTubers like JoltsDude, Yoda Slayer, and many more would then go on to make legendary weapon guides, which would ignite Borderlands popularity even more. If you weren't there during 2012, the only way I can describe this is that it was the Fortnite of looter shooters in terms of popularity. Now granted, we can't ever compare the actual numbers to Fortnite because that was crazy, but it really did feel like that was when looter shooters were blowing up. Borderlands 2 was setting ablaze to the entire genre, and it was going crazy. The dedicated drops, the boss fights, the builds, everything was just lining up, and it all started with dedicated drops, at least from my POV. And so for that reason, I have to put Borderlands 2's dedicated drops as the best feature from that game. It would feel wrong not to me. It would make me feel like a fake fan, so that's why I have to put them where they are, and I'm so glad that in Borderlands 4 they are finally going to be returning. I just hope that the new parts system does not screw that up. Alright, so let's get around to Borderlands the pre-sequel, right? What am I going to mention from this game? Well, there is a lot to love in Borderlands the pre-sequel, a lot to dislike in Borderlands the pre-sequel. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're one of the casuals who doesn't like the oxygen system. Oh boy, they're going to hate me for that. But I have to say that in terms of my favourite feature from Borderlands the pre-sequel, this might be a hot take, it's the Vault Hunters. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, because I feel like it's something which is just entirely subjective to the nth degree, but I really think that Borderlands the pre-sequel does role-playing the best with their Vault Hunters. You've got 6 Vault Hunters in Borderlands the pre-sequel, albeit they are technically villains in this game. Athena, Nisha, Wilhelm, Claptrap, Timothy, and of course, who could forget Aurelia Hammerlock. Now, I have to say, I think there is so many diverse playstyles with these Vault Hunters in the game, and what I love the most is that they all have their own kind of unique trait, right? Like, in Borderlands 2, one of the minor criticisms was that Salvador was just so OP because he could dual wield literally anything. What did they do in Borderlands the pre-sequel? They built upon this and actually improved the formula a little bit by making it so that Nisha could only dual wield pistols, an outlier to what Salvador could do. Wilhelm wasn't just a standard character, they would actually make him more of a progressional character in the sense that as you upgrade him, he literally turns into a robot and can gain stuff like a robotic arm that extends out and also a shoulder laser that fires when you fire. Claptrap had the ability to totally negate the oxygen mechanic, which was really good because a lot of people don't like that mechanic in the game, and Aurelia has an entire tree dedicated to co-op, which is a really unique take on a character, albeit unpopular because most people were just running solo. So of course I'm not going over every character there, but my point is that I really think that Borderlands the pre-sequel has the most interesting and diverse lineup of characters, not only expanding on stuff from the previous games, but making sure to do their own unique spin on them as well. I really like the Vault Hunters of pre-sequel, and even if I hated everything else in the game, I could not dislike this. For me, this is the best part of the pre-sequel. Of course, the only real problem with the pre-sequel was the lack of farming and endgame, and that's where we need to segue into the endgame discussion when we talk about Borderlands 3's best feature, which in my opinion is going to be the takedowns. Now, Borderlands 3, when it launched, let's just say didn't have the most to do, right? The first seasonal event, Bloody Harvest, had mixed reception with people finding it rather tedious and boring, and the slaughters just were not picking up. And then finally, of course, the Proving Grounds, well, they just weren't really rewarding enough to hold players for long, right? So this was a big problem. Most people resorted to either farming Tyrene or Graveward for their drops, and balance was all over the place at the start of Borderlands 3. But Gearbox did slowly start to try and pick themselves up and put the pieces back together when they would release Borderlands 3's first takedown, the Maliwan takedown. But what is a takedown? Well, it's kind of like a Nightfall in Destiny, where you go into an activity area and you are tasked with basically making it to the end, right? It is a gauntlet, a test of power, a test of strength, and in a lot of cases, a test of speed. You're going there to see how fast you can clear it and what loot you can get. All of the bosses have unique drops, and it's a new way to get more story into the game. Now, there are two takedowns in Borderlands 3, the Maliwan takedown and the Guardian takedown, and ironically enough, I actually think that Guardian takedown was kind of a backfire for Gearbox and did a lot more damage than it did good, but that doesn't erase the good stuff that was done by Maliwan takedown, and I've actually got a whole video on the channel going over the craftsmanship of Maliwan takedown if you want to go and check that out. But I will 100% tell you that I think if there's anything to take away from Borderlands 3 in terms of what they should carry over into the other games, it is takedowns. This is a tried and true endgame that now could become a staple of the franchise, and I'd be very shocked if it doesn't return in Borderlands 4 for that very reason. And so it's hard for me to say that I don't want to see them in the next game just because of the shortcomings of Guardian takedown, when we got something like Wotan the Invincible, who is just absolutely wild to look at, right? Just a really fun endgame activity with a really fun boss. And the first time it felt like they truly made something that the community all jumped into together day one, almost like a raid in Destiny. But with that being said, let's wrap this up with the final game, which is going to be Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because yes, it is a Borderlands game. So this one is actually very simple. I don't have much to say about it, but it's not because I'm not that enthralled by it. It's just a very simple but effective change which I think needs to be here through on the next games, right? This is the character customization. It is absolutely second to none. To say that Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has the best character customization in the franchise would be an understatement in of itself. It is absolutely flawlessly executed. There are hundreds of ways that you can mix and match your character to make them look as unique as you want. You can get really silly with it and uncap the sliders to make yourself just look unbelievable, like something made in Oblivion, or you can go really tame with it. But ultimately, it is completely up to you how you make your character look in the game, and I think that is one of the most commendable parts from the game, if anything. Of course, Wonderlands had a lot of shortcomings, but I don't think the character creator is one of them. One of the benefits of the character creator also is that you can actually change the way your character looks without even interacting with the new U machine by simply just equipping a new class mod, or armor in this case, which will give you a new set of actual armor in the game. So you can very easily make your character look like they are a wizard, you can make them look like a Viking, a barbarian, you can make them look pretty much however you want based on the options that are provided to you, and I think a lot of people will repeat what I'm saying here, that the best part of Wonderlands is 1000% the character creator and what it did for the game. My second choice to this would probably be the overworld, but I know some people aren't too keen on it, and I wanted to stick with something that I think everyone can be like, yeah, you know, like, that's really cool, right? And for me, that is the character creator, and that's why I wanted to talk about it in this video today. The perfect time to gas it up, if any. But with that being said, gamers, that's going to do it for my list of the things that I like the most from each Borderlands game. Now, please, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and if you disagree with any of the points that I provided, let me know why you feel so, and yeah, let's keep all conversation constructive and respectful, and yeah, I guess that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, and if you're liking the content on the channel of late, I would highly recommend you drop a sub. Let's try and hit 70k before Borderlands 4 comes out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll check you all in the next one. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you later.